Let's go to housing. Obviously, an issue we know that so many of you are fascinated by and really affected by. If you were to, again, ask me why people hate the economy so much today, this has got to be the most central story, and nobody really talks about it. We did at least get one question about it at the GOP debate, responded to in idiotic fashion by
and everyone
Nikki
had
Haley.
a terrible answer.
We will move past that and just at least give people credit for asking it. But there are some new charts here which highlight a terrible reality. The math for buying a house no longer works. It's one of the biggest flippenings, I guess you could say, in almost 15, 20 years since the Great Recession of 2007. So let's put this up there on the screen. We've got a lot of these that show you that the cost now of an average monthly new home payment is now almost $1,000 higher than the average monthly new lease payment. Whereas the math on that largely worked in your favor for buying a house for more than a decade, 2010 onward, in a lower interest rate environment. But with the massive spike that everybody saw from those new monthly home payments with these interest rates, it makes it so that it doesn't make a whole lot of financial sense. Now, the reason why that's bad is twofold. Obviously, owning a home, especially your first home, is usually the first path that you have to net worth that actually will set you up for retirement and intergenerational wealth. Two, whenever you have it make more sense to rent, that gives all the leverage in the world to the people who are the landlords. And we can see this in some of the other prices that we have access to in some of these other charts. If we want to go ahead to the next one. For example, the average rate on the 30-year fixed mortgage has now skyrocketed to between 6 and 10%. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot to people who are alive in the 1970s, but when you pair it with the median sale price at a literal all-time high, $400,000 for the median sale price. On top of that, it's actually over $500,000 for people who live in a metro area. You're at a point where even coming up with the down payment cash seems like a nearly impossible task. And then having to keep up with mortgage payments, which are in some cases with interest going to be more than your actual paycheck. Why, like, what are you supposed to do? Right now they have, Krystal, the total cost of a mortgage for a $400,000 home at different interest rates. I mean, the difference right now is that for a $400,000 home at 3%, the overall cost with interest leaves you roughly shy of $500,000. Whereas today, with the 8% interest rate or even the 5% interest rate, you are way past that $500,000. You're getting into the $800,000 territory of the amount of interest that you're paying. So then think of it all too about the house has to appreciate more than what, like 40% or whatever over the value by the time you pay it for you to even make any money on the damn house. So at like every level, to buy, to keep, and to sell, we're in a bad market such that people are probably more trapped in housing and from housing scenarios than ever before. This is a terrible impact on the overall economy, and it's really like shrinking upward mobility for an entire generation. I think especially people who are between 30 and 35, people who would traditionally have bought their first home, starter home type situation with one kid, maybe two kids, and would have leveled up after that.
Yeah.
You've got people who either did that and are now locked in. Maybe they don't have any more kids because of that. Maybe they're driving longer commutes, all kinds of things. It really freezes people, I think, at a phase in their life. And it's just so frustrating. I mean, imagine working your whole life, almost a decade, if you're elder millennial, and then you get to a point where you planned the entire time you're going to be ready, and now you can't do it.
Yeah.
So you can see all of it right here in the data.
Yeah, this shows the median age of home buyers, which is now up to 36 or 35 years old. Only a decade ago, it was 30 years old. I mean, that's a really significant difference. Are you, heading into your 30s, or are you heading out of your 30s when you're able to aspirationally buy a home? Some of the numbers in here were pretty shocking to me, even though we've been covering this a lot. They found that before the Fed started raising rates, a person with a monthly housing budget of $2,000 could have bought a home valued at more than $400,000. Today, that same buyer would need a home valued at $295,000 or less. How many homes in your town go for less than $295,000. Not a lot. And there's so little supply on the market, especially of quote unquote starter homes or homes that would be affordable to, I mean, this would take a significant amount of income just to be able to afford this. So it really is an extraordinary landscape. And to tie it in with the political conversation that we've been having, if I was Biden, not only would I be leaning into abortion, this is what I would be talking about relentlessly. It is such an undercovered issue. It gets so little focus and attention, and it causes pain at every level of society. I mean, there is almost no one who isn't impacted by the basic ability to afford shelter, especially in certain cities. Some of the numbers of renting versus buying in major metros, they found that the premium is 175% more to afford a house payment in cities like Seattle, Austin, and several cities in California. So it's even way worse in a lot of places in the country than, the overall numbers. There is a little bit of movement in Congress, or at least some ideas that are beginning to be formulated. And again, these are things that I would lean into like crazy if I was Biden, because I think it would put Trump in a very difficult situation, especially being the real estate developer, being very cozy with, hedge funders and carrying water for them while he was president of the United States. Put this up on the screen. There's new legislation that Democrats in Congress have introduced, both in the House and the Senate, that would ban hedge funds from buying and owning single-family homes in the U.S. It will require them to manage funds pooled to sell off all the single-family homes that they own over a 10-year period, would eventually prohibit those companies from owning those single-family homes at all. During the decade-long phase-out period, it would impose stiff tax penalties with the proceeds reserved for down payment assistance for individuals looking to buy homes from corporate owners. So it would basically get Wall Street out of speculating on single-family homes. We've covered here extensively how this is a very uneven phenomenon, but there are certain cities and certain neighborhoods in America where the, permanent capital coming in and buying up entire neighborhoods, really targeting the more affordable housing areas in major metro areas and making it possible for people to be able to buy homes in that area, companies that are trying to turn themselves into America's landlord. And this has had a major impact, both in terms of the housing stock that's for sale for just regular people, and also in terms of the prices in those areas. So this would go directly after that. I'm all for it. There's another piece of legislation that would require corporate owners of more than 75 single-family homes, so sort of like larger landlords, to pay an annual fee of $10,000 per home into a housing trust fund to be used as down payment assistance for families. Because, Saagar, as you rightly identify, one of the big problems now is people being able to have enough cash up front to be able to compete in the market and be able to secure housing. So it's not just about affording that monthly payment, it's obviously being able to afford that down payment. And so both of these pieces of legislation would try to provide some funds to give people a boost in that area as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I hope that some of this stuff goes through. This is arguably the single most important thing. I know that there are some metropolitan areas which have down payment assistance. It has a limited track record, largely because those exist in areas where the property values are already so. DC, for example, they have one. I think it can go up to like $70,000, which of course is a lot of money. But it's one of those where if you're trying to buy a house, it's $1.2 million. It's not going to.
And you got investors coming in all cash.
And you got people who are not even investors. Another problem I often see, and speaking to people, especially living in California and in New York and Miami as well, the amount of foreign capital. There's really rich hedge funders, people from all over the world. People forget California, New York, Miami. These are some of the most desirable real estate, not in America, but the whole world, because you have access to the U.S. legal system. It's a great place to park cash, but it increases the property values. It makes it very difficult for a lot of local residents to be able to buy in. So structurally, I think things are really not looking good. Housing is becoming effectively a luxury good, which I think is one of the worst developments that we could have in our modern economy, and yet nobody's talking about it, and very few are actually trying to do anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, even these bills, which I fully support, I think they'd be good. This would nibble around the edges.
Yeah, exactly.
You really need a multi-pronged, but you've got one big thing is you've got to surge a huge construction boom of more affordable units, both to rent and to buy. I mean, that's a big piece of the puzzle here. But to get Wall Street out of speculating on housing, which, you know, housing should be shelter for people to live in, et cetera, I think it would be huge. I think it would be very difficult to accomplish because you would have massive
lobbying,
moneyed interest pushback on this idea. But again, if Biden was able to take up this mantle and really lean into it, I do think it would put Republicans and Donald Trump in particular in a very difficult spot. So we'll see if they have two brain cells to rub together to actually get their act together on this one.
Not going to take that bet.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.